Welcome, CSC 103, to our random polygon exercise. This may be as an exercise that counts. It may be as an extra credit, but either way, we're going to get started. And this is the example. And if I run it, you'll see what happens. A random polygon is going to be displayed. That happens to be a pentagon. How do I know it's a pentagon? Because it says pentagon. And I can see that it has 5 sides, and it also has a random color just to increase the fun. Look at that. This time it's a regular blue, and it's an octagon. So that's what's happening here. So we're going to work with arrays, which are lists in Python. We're going to work with random numbers. We're going to work with the random module and use random choice. And we're also just going to draw a polygon the same way we've done it in the past by using a for loop and putting a number of sides in there. And we're going to run a function and call a function. Actually, we're going to have 2 functions because one is going to draw the polygon and the other is just going to write the name, which will be pretty easy. So some of it's similar to the stop sign exercise that we've done in the past. So let's get started. That's what we're going to do. That's the fun that's going to ensue once we get this going. So let's get started. I'm going to go into my repels and I'll go into my CSC 103 folder and I'll create a new repel. And I'll make sure that it's going to be Python with turtle. And I'll just call this 14, and I'll call it random polygons. And I'll just put my last name, first initial, at the end. And we're going to start from scratch because when I looked at the other exercise, we kind of continued off of a different one where we input values. And I'd rather just do this one from scratch. So we'll start this from scratch. That means we're going to start with import turtle, and if you put a comma, you could put random. So you don't have to put import turtle, import random. You can, but we're going to do it that way. So that way we'll have both imports in here, and then we'll create some variables. So I'll put some variables to start. I'll just put a comment there, and we'll do a couple real basic ones. We're going to put variables that indicate the differences that can happen with the polygon. So what are the differences? Well, they could have a certain size. Now, I don't know if they're going to vary in size, but I'm going to put a size in here as a variable, and I'll just put 50 to start. And then I'll put sides because that's definitely going to vary. So I'll put sides in here. And just for now, just till we get it started, we're going to put in sides. So I'll put 5. That way we'll do a pentagon to start. That'll be our sample. And to get the right angle to make something that has 5 sides on it that equals, that's a polygon, basically, you have to divide that number into 360. So we can do angle. I'll just call it angle right here. And I'll do 360 divided by 5. Now, actually, right off the bat, I don't have to say 360 divided by 5 because I can say sides. That means if that's going to change, we already have this kind of built in. So I'm going to put sides in here because that way if I change the 5, that will change. So I'll do that right away. The 360 won't. That's kind of an absolute number. And then the last thing that'll change here will be color. And because we have a color attribute, I'm just going to put CLR. And just to start, I'll make it blue. So I'll just start with something. Just to get started, and then we'll use these. And then we're going to make a function. I could even put a comment and just put function. And this is going to be draw polygon. So we're going to say def draw poly. If you just want to put poly, that's fine too. And put your parentheses. We're not putting any arguments in yet. And make sure you put your colon. That way when you hit enter, everything will be indented for you. So what we'll do here right away. Now we could try this out before doing the function, but we've done a function enough that we can start doing this. We're going to instantiate the turtle. So we'll just use t again. I'll just say t equals turtle, and there's turtle right there, dot turtle, and I'll just click on turtle even though that's a capital T turtle. At least I didn't have to type it. And we'll do that first. I'm not going to put a shape because we're not really going to see it anyway. So I'll just leave that alone, and I'll put t dot color. Now color's the attribute, but I'm going to put color in here because color means it's going to be blue, but it's just using the variable. So that's fine. So now we have that. And we're not going to do a goto. We'll just have it start at its default. It'll just start at 0, 0. So we don't even have to do a goto. But I will do a t.beginFill, and I don't need a value or an argument to go in there. And now what I'll do is I'll do a for loop. You remember doing this with the stop sign. For I in range. And now we're going to put the number of sides in there. And the number of sides is sides. Because remember, we have a variable that represents 5, so just put sides in there. We don't have to put the absolute number because that's going to change anyway. But I still have to put a colon here, and then everything gets indented again. And remember, this is just t dot forward. And how far is it going? Well, we have size there. Sometimes I use length, but we can say size. That's fine. We're just using the variable that represents 50. And then we're just going to do a t.left. That just means he's turning each time. And the angle we're going to use is going to be angle because we're going to use 360 divided by whatever that is. So right now it would be 360 divided by 5, so whatever that is. That's actually 72. So we're just going to put in angle, because angle will be whatever it is. So we don't even have to know the math for that. We just have to know it's 360 divided by whatever that is. And that's our loop. So then after we're done with the loop, at the end here, we have to make sure we hit return and then just go back and stay in here. Now, this is where we end our fill. And then when we're done, we're going to hide the turtle, because we don't need to see a turtle for what we're doing here. We're drawing polygons, so we don't need to see a little turtle. He doesn't have to look at it when we're done. We're going to have another turtle that just writes a word of whatever polygon we're going to use. Now, before we even worry about that yet, let's just call the function and let's get this working. So this should be easy after doing a couple exercises. So I'll just say draw poly, and there it is. And I have to put the parentheses. So what this should do is it should draw a polygon with these values. And let's see what happens, just to make sure everything's working okay. And that looks good. I'll draw it again. Okay, and just so you know, we're starting at 0, 0. So I think what we might do is just put our text here starting there. I've tried to center it in the past, but the way it draws different shapes, some of them are bigger. It doesn't always line up well. So I think I'm just going to keep everything right there. I'll just do our text, and it'll just go down a little bit, and we'll have a word there. And it'll be the same kind of right method that we used with the stop sign. So we could actually do that. That way that part will be done. Yeah, we could do that. Let's get that out of the way. I'll go after here, and I guess we can do function, draw poly function. We'll see if doing it in that order creates a problem. But I don't think it should. So we'll say def, and I'll call it poly name, because it's going to write the poly name. So we'll call it poly name there. And I'll put a colon, and what do we do to write a poly name? Well, we make a new turtle, and I'll just call it W for write, because I think we did that last time. So I'll do W. If we did a T again, that would be okay as well, but I'll just use W, and it wouldn't be dot, it would be W equals T turtle dot turtle. There's the capital T, and there we have that. So we got a new turtle here. We don't have to put a color, because if you don't put any, it'll be black. And we don't have to fill anything. All we have to do is write. So I don't think we have to do anything here other than t.write. Now, if I remember how this works, I think you write what's going to go in there. And I'm just going to put poly name right now. I know that's the same thing as our function. Let me just put poly name in there right now, because it's a string. And I'll do that. And then I'll just put polygon. That way we won't mess it up with poly name, the function name. So I'll put polygon, and then I think it goes font equals, if I remember, and then there's parentheses, opening and closing, and I'll just use Arial, because that's a common font. Arial, and then after that, I'm just going to put maybe 30, and just see how that looks. That should be a size. We shouldn't have to put normal or anything else. And after that, I'll get this extra space out of here. I'll call the function polyname, and let's just see what happens so far. There's our polygon name, so I did something wrong down here, and there, I used a T instead of W. Just out of habit, I used a T. So that should be a W. Let's run that again. And it's right in the same place, so that's okay. So we can put a go-to and move them down. And actually, we can hide the turtle after we're done. I think that's for that one. So we could hide the turtle before he writes the word, I believe. And we're also going to do a go-to. So we might have to do a pen up. So let's do a w.penUp, and then we'll do a w.goto. And when he goes to, he's just going to go down. So we could just say 0 and then like -25 and see how that works. And he's going to go down, and then before he writes, well, actually, I think we could hide the turtle afterwards. I think he shows up at the end. So we got pen up. He's going to go and write that. I don't think we have to put our pen down at all. And after he writes it, I think we could say w.hideTurtle. So let's see how that works out, just to get us started. And there's our polygon. And that's okay. It's a little big, so I might go down to like 24. And we have to probably move it down more now because of the font being a little bit bigger. So maybe we'll make it like 40. We'll see what that looks like. And we could speed it up too. It's going kind of slow here. That looks okay. I think that's fine. So that's what we're going to do, except we're going to have random colors, random sides, and then the names will show up. So we still have some work to do here, but that's kind of at least our structure, our framework of what we're doing. So what we want to do is we want to come up with a bunch of random colors, and also we need their names. So we have to make lists. Keep in mind, if you need something from the list that's going to go in here, that might change. So actually, I'm going to make my list up here. Let's see if we can make our lists here, and I'll just put lists. And I'll make a list called, I'll just call colors. We'll start with that. And the colors that we're going to use, And remember, when we make a list, I don't know if we made a list yet. I think we did early on. But in here, we just use a square bracket, and then we're going to put our colors in here, and they're going to be all in quotes. And you don't have to put the quotes. So we could just, let me just throw some in here. I'll do red, blue, and we'll see how many we have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's okay. I think that's good for now. And now if you wanted to put quotes around these, the nice thing in Replit, you can just double click. And actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to double click. I'm holding down my command key on a Mac, and you'd hold down Control on Windows. And I'll double click around all these. I'll see if this works. And if that way I can highlight all of them. And now if I put quotes in, it should use smart quotes that wraps quotes around them. And look at that. How awesome was that? So I didn't have to put all those quotes in there. So I just was able to highlight all of them. I could have done that one at a time, but I did them all at once. So there's my list of colors. And now I'm going to make a list of polygon names. And I'll call them names. Is fine for now. And I'll equal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do them in order of number of sides. So I'm going to start off, the lowest number of sides we can have for polygon is a triangle. So I'll put a triangle. And maybe I'll just kind of be quiet here, and that way I could run the video faster. I think they're right. Now again, if you want to put quotes around here, which we are going to use, you can hold down your Control key or your Command and then double click and highlight all of these. It won't highlight. Now, I did something wrong there, so just click off. I'll double click here. And now that they're all highlighted, I'll put in the quotes, just the Shift quote. And now they all have quotes. So now I have two lists, one for colors, one for names. And what we're going to do is try to pull random colors from that list. And then we're going to try to pull random sides. Now, random sides is a number. So we could do a random number that's a side. And what we'll do is we'll have to match up to those names. And we'll do that last. But let's first, instead of using a color here, we're going to use a random color. Now, first, we have to generate a random color. Now, there's an easy way to do that, easier than using a random number. They have something called choice, and it's part of the random module. So I'm just going to put random here because we're getting our random numbers. And I'll make a variable that represents whatever choice we take from here. So we're going to pull a color from here, but I'm just going to call it ran color. How about that? Ran color, and it's going to equal random dot. And they have something called choice. Remember, we also have something called rand int that gets a random integer, but this is going to be random choice. So we're going to get random choice, and then in the parentheses, the argument that you put here is actually going to be colors. So you're going to get a random choice from colors. So we'll put colors in there. So whatever you pull from there, what randomly, it's going to be rand color. So then what are you going to do with rand color? You're going to use rand color here, and then that way, whatever random color it gets here, it's going to send to here, and then it's going to send wherever you're using it, which is here. So that'll make a random color. So right now, I think if I run it, it should make it a random color. That should work already. And look at that. Now, right now, they're random pentagons, and that's okay, but they're random colors, so that's working. So that's filtering in, so that's good. Now, all we have to do is make random polygons, and we can use a rand int for that. So we're going to call this rand sides because we're going to get a random number of sides, and then we're going to put it in here for sides. So we're going to say rand sides equals, and it's the same way. Remember, it's random dot rand int. Now that won't come up here, but that's a method, rand int, and we're not going to do anything up here. We're just going to get the rand int is a number, and it's going to be between, remember, 3, because it's going to make 3 sides and 10 sides. We're not going to start at 1 because we're not going to make a one-sided polygon. We'll make a 3-sided polygon or a 10-sided. So we'll make between 3 and 10 is what we're using here. And I think I have them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 8 choices, and we're going between 3 and 10. So that'll make random sides. Now to use rand sides, we're going to use, instead of 5, we're just going to plug it in here. Now we have a random number to plug in here, and I'm going to plug it in here. I could still use sides, and I'll just say, okay, the sides is going to be rand sides. And whatever that is, it's going to use that for the angle, and it's still going to use that. So we're basically taking rand sides and plugging it into sides. So it's still using sides, but instead of using an absolute like 5, now we're using whatever random number comes up. So let's see if this works. There's a pentagon. There we go. That's an odd number because it's pointing at the top. That must be a septagon. And we don't know because it's just saying polygon here. This is a hexagon because I know hexagons when I see them, and I know triangles when I see them, and I know squares when I see them. I think there's another name for a square, but we're just using square. Is it equilateral or something? I forget what the name for a square is, but we'll just stick with a square. All right, so we have the random colors, we have the random shapes. That's working fine. Now all we have to do is change this name so it can basically show whichever one this is from the list. And we can't just do random choice. You might say, well, why can't we just do random choice? Because then they wouldn't match up. It would just be a random choice from the list, and it wouldn't be the same thing. So we have to find a way to kind of match it up. All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to use a variable, and we'll call it polygon. And we're going to say polygon equals, and we're going to put the list of polygons, and I'll put names. And what I'll do is I'll put brackets, and I won't put anything in the bracket yet. But what this does, when you say names and you put brackets here, when you put a number in here, if I put in a zero means it's the first name in the list, which would be triangle. If I put in a 1, it would mean that it's the second name in the list because computers start at 0. So 0 is the first, 1 is the second. So this would be square, 2 would be pentagon because 0, 1, 2 would be pentagon, 3 would be hexagon, 4 would be septagon, 5 would be octagon, 6 would be nonagon, and 7 would be decagon. Okay, so that's the way that works. Now, unfortunately, our random numbers go from 3 to 10. We need numbers that go from 0 to 7 because that's what we have in here, but we'll be able to fix that. That's okay. Let's see if we can do this. We're going to put in the random number, which is ran sides. That's the random number that's going to come up. We're going to say ran sides, and we're still going to be an index number in here. So right now, we could put ran sides, except if we did this and it came up with a 3, well, let's leave it at this right now. Let's just put in ran sides, and I'll just show you what's going to happen. And I'll put polygon down here. Instead of a string, I'm going to put the variable polygon. And I'll just show you what's going to happen here. And then we'll solve the problem and fix it. So instead of putting a word polygon, we're going to put a variable polygon, which basically is going to be names with a number in here. And let's see what happens. We'll just see what happens here. Septagon. That's a square, and it gave me septagon. Square, septagon. Hopefully that's just list out of index. So it came up with something. Now, we don't know what it came up with, but basically it came up with something that's not in the list. So it may have came up with a 9 or a 10, and there's only 7 in the list. But what if we just do this? Because you know, each time we did that, it was 3 off. What if we just did ran sides minus 3? Because remember each one, because it was a septagon, but it was really a square. So what if we just did minus 3, ran sides minus 3? And we just took it down to get that difference because this one starts at 3 and not 0. What if we just did minus 3? Well, let's see what happens. That's a hexagon, and it says hexagon. That's a square, and it's a square. That's a pentagon, and it says pentagon. And there we got our yellow. That's a hexagon. It says hexagon. So we got it. So all we had to do is take something called the index number. The index number is its order in a list. But since the order in the list that we're getting from the random number is 3 ahead, which throws us off, especially if it comes up with something that's not in the list. If it comes up with a 10 and there's only index number 7 in the list, it says out of range. That's why we got that error. But if we just take whatever number comes up here minus 3, then it's matching it up to the random number. It's matching it up to the index number that we really need to get the proper one. So even though this has 3 sides, it's at index 0. And even though this has 4 sides, it's index 1. And even though this has 5 sides, it's index 2. So we know that every time, whatever the number we really want is going to be minus 3 from that. So to get the right name, we just have to subtract 3 from the random number we came up with. And that's a way to kind of solve that there. So by just using random choice, random int, and then actually making a variable that's using the index from a list, which is a cool thing to do. So polygon is a variable, and it represents the list. It represents this particular item from the list. And this particular item from the list happens to be whatever random number comes up minus 3. So if it comes up with 5 and it's minus 3, that's 2. It's going to be 0, 1, 2 would be a pentagon. So that's the way that works. So this is working. So that's your random polygons. There's lots of things we could do with random polygons. We could put random sizes, so they're big and small. We could put random locations. We do an exercise where we do random polygons where they kind of show up all over the place. Instead of just putting a name here, we make them show up in different colors, and they're big and small, and they show up all over our screen that we have here. So that's another exercise we could do called polygons everywhere. But for now, we're just doing our 3 through 10 sides of a polygon and showing their names by using two lists here, one for color, one for the names of the polygons, and just slightly adjusting the random number of sides by subtracting 3 so we can get the right name from our list we have of the polygon shapes. So that's it. There's our code that we're looking at, and it didn't matter that we did function call, function call. We didn't have to do function, function, call, call. That worked okay. You can increase the speed if you want it to go a little faster at some point when they're drawing the sides here, because they take a long time to draw the sides. You could always go in here and just put a t.speed and put something like 8 or 10 in there, and then when you run it, it'll go a lot faster. So you don't have to wait so long when you keep doing this or you're testing it or anything like that. Now it goes pretty quick. So anyway, that's our random polygons exercise for CSC 103.